Welcome to the CE Pro podcast. I'm Executive Editor Arlen Schweiger. Talk about going the extra mile for a worthy cause. This week we're joined by Ian Morrish and Chris Pinder, who have gone above and beyond for UK charitable organization Together for Cinema, which works with sponsors and integrators to install theater rooms at children's hospices. Pinder is the managing director of one such sponsor, HDANYWHERE, and earlier this spring he raised funds for the group by competing in the ultra-grueling Marathon des Sables ultramarathon in the Saharan Desert. He and Together for Cinema founder Morrish shares stories about that incredible ordeal and more in this week's episode. As always, be sure to subscribe to CE Pro's YouTube channel and hit that like button on our videos, or subscribe to the CE Pro podcast on Apple and Spotify and leave a review. Ian Morrish, founder of Together for Cinema, and Chris Pinder, managing director of HDANYWHERE and 1AV over in the UK. For both of you, welcome to the CE Pro podcast. Thank you so much for joining me from across the pond today.
Hey, thanks for inviting us on.
Absolutely. Hi there.
So just to get started, Ian, let's start with you. We've covered Together for Cinema on CE Pro before, but just in case some CE pros and industry manufacturers and distributors are, unfamiliar with what the organization does, if you could just give us a little bit of a refresher there.
Okay. Basically, Together for Cinema is a good cause enterprise, soon to be registered charity, that I started working on in 2009 in my spare time while I was working as the international sales manager at ISE. In 2020, I went full-time, encouraged by the industry, almost persuaded by the industry. I went full-time at Together for Cinema, and what we do, or the main thing of what we do currently, is we rally the industry and to install cinema rooms into children's hospices and respite centres in the UK. We've achieved a lot already, but we'll tell you more about that in a second. But that's basically what we do. So we're a conduit between our industry and some good causes.
Sure. And when you're talking about these projects, who are you able to get involved? Is on the sponsorship side, it's integrators, manufacturers, everything?
Gosh, we have do you know something? We have so many people, so many members of the industry and companies and manufacturers, distributors, installers involved. We have about 45 sponsors that basically sponsor the operation to run, on a day-to-day basis. There's no glitz or glamour of that. It's just basically the operational side. We have some operational partners who help us, like CEDIA, Wildwood PR, who help us with the day-to-day running of Together for Cinema. We have installation partners who have committed to install a cinema room in a particular venue, and they do that free of charge. And we have an awful lot of product partners who have donated products to the various installations. So we're incredibly well backed. We also have media partners. Arlen, thank you. CE Pro one of the 5 or 6 that we have now in globally. So we're very, very well supported by the industry. And I think one of the things I'm probably proudest of founding Together for Cinema, of course, the end result, watching the kids, enjoy a cinema room. But I think is bringing together, collaborating the industry to come together for a real good in the UK. Currently, it's only UK. But there's a lot of companies involved. There really are who are very strongly backing us. And Chris is another of those, Chris Pinder's company.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll get to his involvement in a little bit. But can you get us caught up on some of the recent projects and the plans for 2022? I know you guys had a lot planned for this year when it comes to adding more projects and getting more integrators out there to help you out with that. What are some of those plans for this year?
Well, there's an awful lot of plans. And one thing I didn't mention a second ago is that we also have a steering committee for Together for Cinema, who are 5 industry well-known but people like Wendy Griffiths, like Jeff from CEDIA, Jeff Haywood from Wildwood PR, and 3 other people as well involved. And they're all very, very involved. And they help steer what we do. So this year, well, let me give you a total of where we are so far. So far, we have installed 31 cinema rooms in children's hospices and other respite care centres, disabled centres, and so on for children and young adults. normal cost of that would be in the region of about £700,000 had they been paid for. And that's what we've delivered so far. This year,
and that's over numerous years.
Oh yeah. That's
right.
that's
Okay.
that's numerous years. So bear in mind, the first install was in 2010, so 12 years ago. But only in the last 14 months have I gone full time on this. So last year we installed 4 cinema rooms in the 10 months that I was full time. This year we're looking at 6 or 7 cinema rooms. This year all in children's hospices in the UK. But we have lots of other avenues that we're looking at and have worked on. One is basically servicing and making sure that our previous installations are up and running and someone can go in there and help. Again, we try and do that all free of charge, but if we can't, we have a little bit of money in the pot to pay someone to go in. We're working, as we discussed before the meeting started, the podcast started, we've got a lovely arrangement with Cisco, which I can outline later. They're working very closely with us. And we're recycling secondhand and B-stock products to good causes as well. So at the moment, the can of worms I open, they're wriggling furiously, and there's lots to do. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that can be done. It's only me at the moment. I hope that might change in time. But yeah, there's a hell of a lot going on, which is great. By the end of the year,
give an example, Ian, of just say 1 or 2 of the projects that are happening this year in terms of like where it's taking place,
yeah.
And what installers helping out with that.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's say there's certainly 6, maybe 7 installations this year, and the total value of those this year will be in the region of about £180,000 had they normally been paid for. One particularly is a place called Andy's sort of Children's Hospice, which is part of a St Andrew's Hospice up in Grimsby in northeast England, and that's been managed by a super installer called Sonic Vision, and their MD Ben Cook, and that's a really super installation. There's some very, very good kit going in there. Epson projector, monitor audio speakers. We've got Denon AVR, HDANYWHERE cables, Sony Blu-ray. A properly decent kit going in, projector screen. So it's all top end, and that would normally be about a £45,000 install. And the render on that, the design for that is super. So Peter Aylett from Cedia is helping us with some sound paneling, and they'll be sort of decorated with cartoon scenes to match the speaker grills. It's a really good install actually, and this is not just putting in a TV and some speakers. It's a proper home cinema. The kids cannot go to the cinema. They're in wheelchairs or they have behavioral issues. And Chris has seen this firsthand, and it's quite moving to see the difference we make. They can't go to a normal cinema, so their parents can't relax with them. They can't relax with their siblings, but they can when they're in their safe place where the care is there, the carers are, the medical equipment. They can be who they want to be, and they can just lose themselves in a movie. They're relaxed. It's a great difference actually we make. It really is.
Yeah, that's tremendous. So Chris, we did want to turn it over to you. You had a huge fundraising effort that just went on that we want to get into. Before we start about that, let's talk about your involvement, how you and your companies got involved in Together for Cinema, and what was your background in the industry?
Well, my background, am I on mute or not?
No, we can hear you.
Good.
You are
okay.
good to go.
So on my background is primarily cable supply and video matrix, video distribution products in the UK. And my brand HDANYWHERE donated some equipment and cables to various Together for Cinema projects. And yeah, that's really how we first came into contact with the charitable organization, and it was a perfect combination of passion for what we do professionally and a really undeniably worthy cause. It's children, it's their families, their carers, the amazing people that maybe aren't related to them but still want to help care for them. And it's just a really mind-blowing world that's out there of these special places filled with very special people that deserve these amazing cinemas. Sorry,
not a problem there. And how did you learn about the group? Was it just kind of, reading industry magazines, following on social media, things like that? And how long ago did you start providing some of the solutions to help out with these rooms?
We've known each other. How long have we known each other, Chris? I mean, probably on and on. I mean, very well. We've known each other for the last 14, 15 months, but we've known each other probably 5, 6 years in the industry.
Yeah.
And I think you've donated in the last 3 to 4 years. I mean, once you got to know more about it.
Yeah, and Ian is a CEDIA award-winning person. He's what was the award? Absolute Legend Award or something like that.
Now you're embarrassing.
Lifetime achievement or something.
It was very, very honoured. In 2017, they awarded me the Special Recognition Award.
There we go.
Which they don't give out terribly often, but it was really, to me, it was just, hey, everybody involved deserves part of this award because everybody's made this happen. There's so many people, but yeah, someone's got to front it. So thank you for mentioning that, Chris.
Yeah, no problem. And it's in the industry press here in the UK, we have our equivalent of CE Pro is called Essential Install, and they heavily support Together for Cinema, and it's like a community publication within the UK install community. So we're kept well up to date with, the 6 or 7 projects that happen each year. And I just saw today that one was completed in a place called Carlisle in England by a local installer there called Magic House, with a Starscape fiber optic ceiling and beautiful LED lighting, and one of the things that's so important in these special cinema rooms is that they're accessible to not just wheelchairs, the small and the big electric wheelchairs, but also you can wheel full-size beds into these rooms. So they're kind of like, in a way, they're a juxtaposition of a hospital room that transforms into an amazing cinema. And they did a great job at a hospice called Jigsaw in the north of England. So yeah, it's great to see these projects, and it just goes to show that our industry and what we do can provide a good community service, not just for the people who can afford the cinemas, but for those who just can benefit from them, who are in the time of need. And it's really fulfilling to be involved with it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So clearly you wanted to help raise funds for the organization, and you wound up competing in an event called the Marathon des Sables. We can help with that pronunciation. And it took place pretty recently. So just tell us a little bit, maybe you and Ian can tell us a bit about how that came about. What was your background as an athlete, competing in any similar events, if you did any of those, and just, how you decided on that as a target for something to be as a fundraiser for this, for Together for Cinema.
Well, I wouldn't have described myself as an athlete until about a year ago. I was just a soccer player, and I was a goalkeeper, so I never did much running in all my years of playing soccer. But I wanted to do a challenge that made people have a double take when they saw it, and made people, raise their eyebrows that I was doing such a ridiculous challenge, and running across the Saharan Desert, carrying all your own food and your sleeping kit on your back for 6 days for 250 kilometers is quite an extreme race. In fact, it's known as the world's toughest foot race, and not just because of the distance, but because it's a very brutal environment to run in, and you're also, at the end of every day, you're sleeping on hard ground and trying to deal with sandstorms, and then getting up the next day and doing it all over again. So it's quite an ordeal. But really, I only picked it because it was like good for marketing purposes. Yeah.
Did you know? I mean, did you know what you were getting into? How did you know about this event in the first place? And what was the training like? Just to be, and when did you start training for it?
I started training about 10 months before. I went to visit a guy in the UK who'd done it 15 times, like a legend of the race called Rory Coleman. And he's, the first time I met him, he said, what's your marathon time? And I said, I haven't never run a marathon. And he was like, okay, what's your half marathon time? I said, I've never run a half marathon. And he was like, are you for real? This race, people train for 3 years to do this race.
It's the equivalent of 6 marathons. Do we have that right? 6
marathons in 6 days. And he said, he just said, look, Chris, if you can't, I'll be honest with you, I think you're wasting your time. I'll tell you what, don't waste your money paying me to coach you. Unless you can do 6 marathons in 6 days before Christmas, which was only a few months away by that point, he said, you're not going to, it's no point you even heading to the Sahara. You're never going to do it. And that kind of, maybe he understood that I was a competitive person. So I was like, okay, yeah, 6 marathons in 6 days before Christmas. I'll show you, I can do that. And I hit the training pretty hard, and I gave up alcohol and bread and started running nearly 100 miles a week. Just pretty much instantly, just had to do it. And there's a video on YouTube. If you follow me on Instagram, I think it's Chris_Pinder_. There's some videos of me with Rory and my whole training and the story leading up to the race, of which Ian was a part of too. And Ian, I don't know.
Ian, did you think Chris was just crazy? What were you thinking?
Well, I have to say, I think actually, let's go right back to the beginning where Chris said to me, I'm going to do the marathon for, Marathon des Sables for Together for Cinema. I said, oh, great, Chris, that's super. I said, well, tell you what I'll do, mate. I'll come with you to Morocco, and I'll just go from the hotel to hotel. We'll have a drink in the evening. I'll spur you on and so on. And I thought it'd be a nice jolly, but I felt I should be there to support him. I had absolutely no idea what he was getting into. This is properly in the desert. The only thing you see is camels and the odd bivouac tent and so on. So I didn't go with him, of course, because it would have been crazy. I don't think Chris had, he had a clue as to what he was getting into. But this is a properly hard challenge. And I'll give you one day example. There are 6 days of running. Well, in fact, 7, because the last day is very short, 7 kilometers of celebratory run almost. But on I think it's the 4th day, is it, Chris, the longest day? So the 4th day, they're not all exact marathons, but on the 4th day, they have a long day. So imagine this, you get up at 8:30 in the morning and you put your jogging shoes on and you run up and down the driest, sandiest hill that you can imagine in 42 degrees centigrade until midnight. That was what Chris did effectively. Okay, there were certain areas that was a little bit easier to run on. But that's 15 and a half hours, 80 kilometers, was it?
Yeah, about 80 something kilometers, 85, 84 kilometers.
It's not even comprehensible. I did some cycling. I said to Chris, while you're out there, mate, I'll do my bit. I'll cycle a marathon a day. So I did. I'm a 56-year-old, quite a cuddly chap. So it was still quite a challenge for me. I was knackered at the end of it.
Right, I saw you were posting your cycling videos. Sure.
Yes, I know. Yeah, don't show those, please. Just put them in a lead box. They don't need to be seen by anyone. But it was just me trying to do something for my head, really. And also, you know, not that Chris needed any spurring on, but the more he knew that was going on around him, the more his daughters said, "Do well, Daddy," which is a phrase that resonates with Chris. You know, do well, you know, and he knew that everyone, the money that was people were donating and so on, it just drove him. So, but I mean, you've got to be driven anyway to do 80 odd kilometers in 15 and a half hours. You know, it was extreme, genuinely extreme. And I have to say, and I will say this because I know when Chris finished, he burst into tears. And I still get emotional now because all I said to Chris, just get home safe, mate. Just, it doesn't matter if you don't finish, just get home safe. And so when he finished, I had tears in my eyes, probably more so because I still had 20 miles to go on my last bike ride. And I just actually finished my 6 marathons and I had 20 miles to go. So, but it was actually a very intense and very emotional time for us all. So, you know, Chris and I got very close over the last, you know, few months. And you know, it's just going to say I love him. I do. I was part of me that loves Chris. I think he's just an incredible individual who has, you know, put his heart and soul out there for a good cause that I happen to be involved with. And but bigger than that, he's just the most. I think it's the most. It's a fabulous message to send to people. If you're thinking about it, go do it. Don't sit back and think about it. Go do it. And he did. Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, what can you tell us about just some of the experiences that you had out there? I know you said so your family stayed back in the UK and it was just you. What was the journey like when you were there? The traveling, the day-to-day experience, and like you said, the kind of the sleeping. How was how was that if you were actually able to sleep?
Well, the best way I can describe it, and you know, is it's like you've been taken captive in Mad Max, and you're being made to run each day to your next location, and you're being given water rations, just the right amount, barely enough, and you've got to you're stripped back of who you are. You know, you're just my race number was 581. Then they insist on you saying it in French, so it was 541, and you know, it's you're no longer Chris Pinder. You're no longer the boss of people or whoever. You are just number 581, and you've got to get checkpoint to checkpoint, and you just break it down like that, and you realize that, you know, your competitors are just all in the same boat as you. You've all just got the task of getting one foot in front of the other and making it to the next checkpoint. And when you finish the day, you get given your 1.5 liter bottle of water, and you walk to your tent or your bivouac, which is basically a bit of carpet with 2 sticks in the middle, and you sleep as best you can and try and wake up the next day. But sleeping in the desert was difficult because this year was particularly bad for sandstorms. So the tent kept blowing away and sand was just constantly hitting you. If you had open skin, it felt like you were being jet blasted with a sand blaster, and it was quite an ordeal. And I think the fact that you're doing it with people around you and you're kind of supporting each other to get through the race, it was not the sort of event that I thought it was going to be when I first started. It was way more extreme and way more much more of an ordeal. It's not just a running race, it's an actual survival event, because you've got to sustain yourself. All the food you have to carry in your rucksack. So there's, you know, by the end of the race, by day 6, I only had macadamia nuts left. Like, and the thing is, there's day 5, I just only had macadamia nuts left. And I just finished the marathon stage, the last big stage, and I actually came 81st out of 900 people or something on that day. So I was really, really pleased. And instead of celebrating with a can of Coke or you know, a nice large beer or a nice steak and chips, you go back to the tent just like any other day, open up your rucksack, and I've got a few macadamia nuts and some warm water. So, and it's a brutal race, but that's why people do it, because it makes you appreciate what we have in our day-to-day life back here in the normal world. And one day in the desert, and I'll just turn that light back on. No, I won't. One day in the desert is nowhere near as hard as what some of these families and these children are facing in their whilst they're in the hospice. If you're in a hospice, we all know what that means, and it's far more tough than what I faced, and I had that on my mind as well. So
yeah, is that part of what just drove you to not say, hey, I'm done with this, I only have macadamias? Like, how did you get through that last push just to finish? And you did actually finish the race and with a great time and all that, right?
Well, on the last day, I'll be honest with you, the night before, we were brought some messages from home, printed emails that had been, you could send a message on the race website to competitors. I think it was limited in characters, and the system hardly worked throughout the race, and people were getting the messages in drips and drabs. And on the night before the final long marathon stage, I had a message from my daughters, and my youngest daughter Hetty had just written "do well." That was all she'd said, because she was obviously playing on her iPad or something and couldn't be bothered to write anything longer than that. So "do well" was all she said. So that stuck with me, and as I was running as fast as I could on that final day, because it was the final day, I knew, like, this is it, got to leave it all out there, cross that line with not 1 ounce of energy left. And I ran like hell, and the whole way, whilst I was heavily breathing, I was just saying, "Do well, do well, do well, come on, do well, do well." I must have said it 10,000 times. I got over the line, and I've never been so depleted in my life. I couldn't speak. There was a guy, like, the press were at the end of the race, and they're shoving a camera in your face saying, "How do you feel? Have you got anything to say?" And I just couldn't speak.
Pretty knackered.
Absolutely knackered, as we'd say in the UK. I was done.
Let me just jump in, because I met Chris at the airport when he came back.
Right, I was going to ask you about that. You guys kind of shared the reunion with family, right?
Yeah, I sort of gate crashed a bit, but I did check with his wife and family, and they were okay with it. But one of the most moving things, obviously, seeing Chris hugging his daughters and his wife was very moving and so on. We had a hug, and probably eyes filled up a little bit as well. But one of the most moving things that I remember seeing there was Chris standing with his 6 or 7 English friends who'd all ran the race, not together, but they'd stayed in the same tent, and they had buddied up at various times during the race. So there's one thing having the drive of, the money raised, and your girls saying "do well," and an industry behind you, and your colleagues, and all of that fabulous, incredible support that gets you to the start line. But when you're actually in the race on your own, it's brutal. And I think those 7 or 8 people, who I know Chris has said will be lifelong friends now, actually were the real crutches for everybody. So it's fabulous seeing Chris with those 6, 7 other guys at the airport. And I think that was, when you're running, a real difference. And every night as well, you're helping each other with your blisters and whatever else, Chris, I think you explaining that you just get on and help each other because you have to.
Yeah, I mean, you're a real band of brothers, just like you do feel like you're in a French-run prisoner of war camp, and you've been taken, you've been captured, and you're there with your British compatriots in a tent, and you just kind of got to get through it. And you mentioned blisters. you think before the race that tiredness and fatigue is what is going to stop you from finishing, because that's what it's like in training. But in reality, when you're there, the things that really bring you down are the blisters on your feet. You've never seen blisters. Everyone gets blisters out there. It's almost impossible to not get them. And your feet are just in bits with sort of razor sharp pain blisters, and your shoulders are also in bits because the rucksack has been digging in for so long, and you kind of you feel like one big bruise. Anywhere you touch kind of aches, but the blisters is an interesting one that you might want to learn, that they have a special tent for you to go to at the end of each race day called Doc Trotters. Now, this is like a group of French nurses who have a sadistic love for blisters, and you go and lie down in this tent and you put your feet up, and then a nurse comes along and takes a look at your blisters and deals with them in the way that they deal with them. And how they do that is they take a syringe and they drain the blister by sucking out what's in there, and then they inject it again with iodine, which burns like someone's holding a Zippo lighter underneath your toe, and you can't move it. And then they strap it up, and you hobble around back to your tent, and you get up the next day and you run. And I guess there's everyone hobbling around the camp with these blue plastic bags on their feet because they've all visited the Doc Trotters to get their feet sorted out. And wow, it doesn't matter what brand of shoes you wear and how much special socks and stuff you've put on, you cannot avoid it. Your feet are going to swell, they're going to rub, sand's going to penetrate them somehow, and you're going to end up with blistered, painful feet. And
it's amazing that you're able to get up and start running again the next morning. What was the courses itself? What was that like?
It was like you're in an episode of Star Wars, and it's very, very, very similar. In fact, I think Star Wars might have been filmed in that part of Morocco, or very similar kind of landscapes, vast plains of sand dunes, and you do that for 20 kilometers, and then you'd be climbing up a rocky jebel, they're called, but there'd be like a rocky outcrop with a rope, so you're not just running, but you're almost kind of scrabbling as well. And then you'd be down into a dry riverbed, and you'd really enjoy that section because you've finally got something a bit firmer under your feet. And then the way they design the race, it's just when you think you're having a nice easy finish, they'll put 5k of sand dunes, and it's really hard to navigate sand dunes fast because they're so undulating and curvy. You try and you have a technique for moving efficiently over sand dunes, and that is, you really want to ride the crest. So it's actually quicker to kind of go in a windy route along the crest of the sand dunes than in a straight line up and down. And you realize that 5k actually turns into 7 or 8 because you're wiggly winding your way there. And yeah, I mean, there were moments where I'd run out of water, and I was thinking to myself, "Oh, Chris, you've really messed up here. You slow down to a walking pace." And there was one moment on day 3 which was really quite dangerous. I'd run out of water about probably 6 kilometers from the finish, and I looked behind me and I looked in front of me and I couldn't see anyone at all, and I just carried on walking, probably staggering about this point, feeling really rather sorry for myself. And luckily for me, a Belgian competitor came up behind me and must have thought, hey, I can't leave this guy staggering around, and he offered me his water, and I was able to not collapse and just get through. And there's moments like that I could have failed because of collapsing, dehydrating. And so I say often that I'm very lucky. I'm a very lucky individual, and there were definitely a few moments during the race where I was super lucky not to have not been pulled out or taken to the medical tent. I probably went a bit hard for a non-elite athlete, which I'm not. I'm not an elite athlete. I'm only 5'10". I'm not really built like a runner, but I just, the way I'm programmed is I try and keep up with whoever's in front of me, and I probably hit it hard a few times, going a bit too fast, and that you get a bit unstuck later on in the race with that.
I used to keep saying to Chris, Chris, run wise. Don't think you don't have to keep up with the guy in 5th place or whatever. Just run wise, because Chris's ambition was to finish top 100, which was a mad ambition almost for someone who's just started the race. And bear in mind, 20 to 25% of the people pulled out. So because it was so tough. So for Chris to finish in the top 100 of 1,100 competitors was hugely ambitious. He ended up finishing, where was it?
158.
158. So it's those 581 numbers again. Just in a different order. So he ended up,
maybe go and play the lottery with those.
Exactly. Yeah, keep those numbers. But that's how confused you were. So you end up with 158, starting as number 581. But
so Ian, you from your standpoint, you're back in the UK. You're following along. You're seeing donations come in as the races are going on. And Chris, it's amazing, and congratulations on finishing the race. Ian, tell us a little bit about just the fundraising aspect of it. The donations, like I said, you saw them as they were going in. The numbers kept going above. I know there was a target and it was exceeded. Tell us about that and what it means really to Together for Cinema.
Gosh, I mean, Chris, you should probably cover some of this, but I mean, I'm happy to interject at any time. Chris set a target, a very ambitious target of 25,000 to raise for Together for Cinema, and incredibly, that was hit. I think almost as you got on the plane, wasn't it? It was. I think you were there pretty much by the time you got on the plane, Chris. Chris had worked his audience, his working audience, his family, friends, and so on, really hard, and they have been so supportive. Melanie Malcolm from Bespoke Home Cinemas in the UK and myself were sort of part of Team Pinder, helping manage things while he was out running, and we worked our audience in the industry, etc., etc. So we got to the 25 by the time the race began, which is amazing. We then were informed of in fact shortly before this, of a single very large donation of £10,000 from one individual in the industry who I would love to say, but I mean, he sort of said he's not too, I don't know, Chris, what do you think? But it's a company in the UK and an individual who just backed Together for Cinema and wanted to do something, significant. So there's a £10,000 donation there. Chris, if you want to say, you can. Then we had, actually AV Pro in the US. Jeff Murray very kindly donated some money to the cause and also to Together for Cinema at the same time. So we had these surprise donations come in, which leapt it up to about 35, 36, 37,000.
I should say just that the other US brands we had right at the start that helped get me high before I went. We had Just Add Power. I've known Ed Quarles and the guys there for a decade or more now, and they donated. They were one of the main sponsors, so I should make that. And the company that Ian referred to with the big anonymous donation, they also operate in the US, and they're called Pulsate. So he's actually a competing company to mine. So it was an extremely magnanimous gesture, and one that I think is real fantastic, bipartisan kind of gesture for the cause, which is great. Sorry, Ian, carry on.
No, that's fantastic. And where did the total end up, Ian?
Well, I'll just say we had another couple of big sponsors. We had Lilin. They were very supportive. Essential Install magazine, very supportive. And then there was a local company to you, Chris, I forget, but the name. But, yeah. So we ended up, and where we are now, with the race completed, we've had a quiet 10 days as things have gone down. But we're at £46,120, which, Chris, I think you said was the equivalent of about $60,000. It's a huge amount of money. We're pushing for 50,000, so we've got, what's that, £3,880 to go. So there is still the opportunity for anyone to donate and back what Chris has done and back Together for Cinema. And how can they do that, Chris? So just very quickly.
They just need to visit pinder.com, like Tinder but with a P.
So pinder.com, and then click on the marathon, I think the race. So they're little plugs, sorry. But that money makes a massive difference to Together for Cinema. I mean, our sponsors cover the day-to-day runnings of Together for Cinema, but we can't do much beyond the day-to-day operational activities of Together for Cinema. So the monies that Chris has generated, I mean, you can look at it in many ways. It secures us in a long term. You know, you could say that it's two cinema rooms in 2 children's hospices. You could say that we can use it intermittently for, for example, the twinkly lights on the ceilings, which the children absolutely love, and they're a must. But we can't get those donated every single time. That's a huge expense for a relatively small company in the UK called Starscape. So they donate a couple a year, and we pay a trade price for the others. But there are certain things that we can now do that make a really significant difference. Other areas where the monies can be used is, of course, as these installations are installed, sometimes the kit is faulty, sometimes it's dated, sometimes it needs reprogramming, sometimes they need to take it down and store it and reinstall it, and so on. So we have a little bit of something where we can manage the installs after they're installed. We're becoming a registered charity. We may need a little bit of help with that. We may need some legal advice. It just enables us to do a little more without worrying about it, and without me going to the sponsors again and going, sorry guys, we need another 20,000 this year. That's how I see the money's being used. But Chris, you may, the sponsors may want to, all the people who donated might want to think, okay, 2 cinema rooms is where it's going to go, and that's fine. It's just the big picture is now a little bit more buoyant and positive.
We just want to do as many cinemas, get them across the line, and sometimes they might have 8 devices out of 10 that they need donated, and we just need to buy 2 to finish the job.
And we'll get on with it, do it.
Yeah. There's 54 children's hospices in the UK. And that's an achievable number that we could potentially have some sort of room in every single one if they're willing and need it and want it. And then you look at the other places like respite centres, and then who knows, there's so many other things that the charity that Together for Cinema could get involved with. Wi-Fi networking within the buildings, and I know Cisco are becoming interested in that.
Yeah, definitely.
These special places, they're not actually government funded. A lot of them are reliant on grants and donations and benefactors. So anything we can do as an industry, whether that be cinema focused or other technologies, to help these special places out is something that I'm sure Together for Cinema are going to be interested in.
Sure. So Ian, just to kind of circle back around and wrap us up here, what can you share about other endeavors that Together for Cinema has going on just for the remainder of the year? You mentioned the Cisco partnership and anything else on the horizon.
Okay, I mean, the main goals for this year, I think, for me, are to finish the 6 or possibly 7 children's hospice installations, and that will be done. We're in good shape there. Second thing is to become a registered charity, which I have to say is one of those jobs that has dropped because we've been so busy with so many productive things, but that needs to get done, and that is a priority. Then we can have, we can actually have access to the revenues that Chris has raised, and we can get that in a secure charitable bank account. The Cisco arrangement is really exciting actually. It's actually one of my family members, sort of slightly removed family member, chap called Andy Candlish, who works for Cisco in the UK. We were chatting over a beer, as you do. Some of the best ideas are over a beer. And we just said, let's get together. Cut a long story short, we met with Together for Short Lives, who is the umbrella charity that sort of oversees these 54 children's hospices. And we just basically said, hey, look, Cisco have got, every member of staff at Cisco apparently gets 10 days of good cause holiday every year. A lot of it is used, quite a lot of it isn't, as it could be. So Andy said, well, look, let's just get in with Together for Short Lives. Let's go to all the hospices. Let me give give them all 3-4 days of staff every year. And we'll go in and we'll give them WebEx kit. We can do this, we can do that. Ultimately, with 54 kids hospices and what I think Cisco are prepared to offer, and we're still at the pilot stage now, as opposed to being finally confirmed, it's potentially a 7-figure benefit to Together for Short Lives and the hospices, which I'm delighted to be sort of helping drive, and it's come as a Together for Cinema result. And that's really exciting. They make a proper difference to them in terms of the networking, their Wi-Fi, their video communication, all the high-techy stuff that I really don't understand, but I know there's a huge demand for it. Pilot is 4 hospices that at the moment are having those appointments made with those Cisco staff. There's another 5 after that, which is next stage, and we expect it to be rolled out beyond that. So that's really, really exciting. That's a proper change that we're making.
Great, excellent. Well, such wonderful news. Really great, and for Chris and Ian to come on the podcast, share your amazing story with the recent events. We really appreciate that with CE Pro, and really thanks, guys, for taking so much time to spend on the CE Pro podcast and get us caught up and tell your story. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your interest.
Thanks for being interested.